and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. I'm Julie Hartman. It is Monday, April 22nd, 2024. It is great, as always, to be with you, as it is to be with Sean McConnell, aka Shanzi, who's in the producer's dungeon. Hello, Shanzi. Welcome to the show.
Hola, Jules. How are you?
I'm good, but America isn't so good, and our colleges and universities apparently aren't so good, which is what we're going to be discussing today. 844-861-5537 is the call-in number, 844-861-5537 if you would like to discuss this. And as always, you can use the chat as long as you keep it classy. And for those of you who are new to the show, I offer you a very warm welcome. We are live Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I know we're a little late today, but things have been percolating, shall we say. That's a colossal understatement with regard to this whole Columbia mess. And so I wanted to delay the start by 10 minutes to make sure that I had all of the important information for this episode. But for those who are new, those are the times of the live show. And then as you may see on the Julie Hartman YouTube channel, we take highlights of the live episode and we post them as their own shorter Julie Noted news clips. That's what I call them, Julie Noted, the clips that I find to be noteworthy. And as a final add-on, if you are interested in watching my show with Dennis Prager, aptly called Dennis and Julie, you can check that out every Sunday right here on this YouTube channel, also at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. But let's dive into the main subject of today, which is this insanity at Columbia University, which is both shocking and totally unsurprising. And actually, the latter point is one of the main arguments that I plan to make today, that no one should be shocked, as shocking as it is, by what is going on right now at this university. I'll just pause and tell you that about a week ago, I was having a conversation with one of my close friends about all that is going on with regard to these Israel protests. If we can even call them that. Protests is a nice way of calling the movements and demonstrations and how rancid they have become. But anyway, I was talking with a friend about these anti-Israel outbursts. And just one after the other, we have seen people blocking the entrance to the Chicago O'Hare Airport. We saw people doing a sit-in at the San Francisco airport. Recently at Northwestern, they were chanting, hey, hey, ho, ho, Israel has got to go. There was that UC Berkeley law professor debacle. I mean, every single day, we're just seeing another crazy story with regard to all of this rancid anti-Semitism. And so last week when I was talking with this friend, we were considering this question of how is this all going to end? Or how is this all going to shake out in the future? And I put my right hand to God. God is my witness. I said a week ago, I think what's going to happen is that these universities are going to become non-functionable. Like something is going to happen. And I said, maybe classes will have to go online. People will have sit-ins. Something is going to metastasize in a really ugly and glaring way so as to be so severe to literally stop the functions of universities, because the rate that all of this was going just could not have continued without something like what happened today happening. So I'm just throwing it out there that about a week ago I called it. And what I would like to call right now is that this is not the end of it. What we're seeing at Columbia today, I think, is maybe one of the first examples of more that is coming at colleges and universities, of these universities becoming non-functionable because people are getting arrested, people don't feel safe going to class, people don't want to show up to class, etc. But let's just start with some background in case people haven't been watching the news. So what happened is that last Thursday, there were about 100 or so students on Columbia's campus who staged a, quote, Gaza Solidarity encampment on the South Lawn at Columbia University. And these protesters, if we can call them that, again, it's a very nice word to use for these individuals, would not leave. They were being extremely loud and combative, and they were impeding the functions of the university by camping out on one of the main campus centers. And so the president of Columbia University decided to call the police and have these students arrested when they did not take the warnings by the Columbia president to clear out. Here's just some news footage of that occurrence.
For what reason? I'm just standing on the sidewalk.
Police in riot gear detained protesters at Columbia University, loading them into multiple buses as they cleared out students who had camped out in tents on the school's south lawn. The mass protests over the war in Gaza began Wednesday.
Columbia has shown over and over again that they don't care about student rights, they don't care about student voices, they don't care about student safety.
School administrators today asked NYPD to clear the tents and suspended several students who participated, including the daughter of Representative Ilhan Omar, according to a tweet on X.
Ilhan Omar said that she's never been more proud of her daughter. No wonder her daughter was at that protest. Who is surprised? Definitely not me. Well, that was at Columbia University. As I said, this has been happening all over the country at all different universities. Look at this despicable act of tearing down an American flag that happened a few days ago at Yale. That's some more footage at other universities. But you can see that this has been happening all around the country. You know, if we could cut in and just have a moment of some levity amidst the insanity, there is an Israeli SNL-like show in Israel, which did a parody of Columbia University students and other college students. Let's roll that clip.
On YouTube with Columbia Anti-Semitic News, where everyone is welcome. LGBTQH. Hamas. Just look at all this toxic Zionist propaganda. Kidnapped in Gaza. Does this look like Gaza to you?
Yeah, bro, I have no idea what Gaza looks like.
And they're smiling. Do hostages smile? Zionist liars.
Totally sus.
Do they think we're stupid?
Stupid? I major in queer post-colonial astrology.
That first video that I showed of the news outtakes of what happened at Columbia on Thursday, there was someone being interviewed in that first video who looked exactly like one of those actors on that Israeli SNL. You got to suffuse some levity amidst the madness here, but we know that this has gotten to a point of no return. What we are seeing right now is a huge kind of explosion of things that have been percolating for some time. It is now metastasized into a problem which is, I don't want to say irreversible, but is irreversible unless there is a massive reset and overhaul. And that's what the president of Columbia University said. So today, Columbia University came out and said that they are canceling all in-person classes today. This was after, over the weekend, one of the main rabbis at the Columbia Hillel put out an email, which I have here, to the student body and the faculty, in which he said that Jewish students do not feel safe on campus. And that's not I feel unsafe, like I feel triggered. Literally, they are unsafe on campus. And this rabbi said that he is encouraging students to take Zoom classes and to go home because the campus environment has gotten so hostile and, in the truest sense of the term, unsafe. So then the Columbia University president today, in response to what has happened and perhaps in response to that email, suspended all in-person classes because today, among other things, is Passover. She wrote in an email, quote, "I am deeply saddened by what is happening on our campus. Our bonds as a community have been severely tested in ways that will take a great deal of time and effort to reaffirm. We need a reset. She's right about that. They definitely need a reset. You know, speaking personally for a moment, as some of you know, I graduated from Harvard nearly 2 years ago. This May, it is coming up on 2 years. And I am no stranger to the rancid, woke, illiberal, crazy on-campus environment that many of these colleges and universities have become. Now, obviously, I was at Harvard in a pre-October 7th moment. But as I said earlier, if there's one point that I want to make today, it is that none of this, as disgusting as it is, none of this should be shocking to people. The seeds of this kind of entitlement, this kind of craziness, this kind of corrosive way of thinking have been there for some time. They were there when I was in college, and they were there before I was in college. This has been percolating over the past decade. And I think sometimes when people look at those Columbia students or those Yale students or those Ohio State students or those Harvard students or name any other university students and their crazy behavior, I think they kind of tend to think like, oh, those individuals are, you know, just brainwashed by social media, or they're a fringe. And the university isn't teaching those things. Or if the university is teaching them, they're teaching them on kind of a light level. But there are other factors contributing to those students' craziness. No. They are being taught and deeply encouraged to be the kind of radicals that they are. And let's look at some proof of that. As I said, this existed when I was in college, and this existed before I was in college. For so long, adults, deans, faculty members, TAs, really people on campus who should be setting good values, have been encouraging and rewarding students for misbehaving, because they say that they are doing that in the name of saving their nation, in the name of fighting racism and bigotry. I remember being at my college graduation 2 years ago in May, and dean after dean got up in front of us and said, "You guys are going to be the generation who turns our world around. You are the most enlightened, tolerant generation to ever exist in the United States of America." And I remember sitting there on my college graduation, listening to this and going, first of all, how do you know that? We're 22 years old. How can you say that at 22 years old, anyone is going to go on to do anything, let alone save the world, which is essentially what they were telling us that we were going to do? And also, I was sitting there thinking, honestly, a lot of evidence to the contrary. When they tell us, you know, you're the most tolerant generation in American history, I'm sitting there going, actually, in many ways, we are some of the least tolerant members of a generation in American history. But for so long, when you are told that you are so spectacular and your resistance and your throwing a hissy fit is what is saving this country, then no wonder you see so many people doing it, and it's gotten to this insane scale. So if you don't take my word for it that this kind of a puffing up was done to students at my college graduation, let's watch our president, Joe Biden, then Vice President Joe Biden, delivering the class day speech at Harvard University in 2017. Listen to what he says to those Harvard graduates.
In order to fill your destiny, class of 17, it's absolutely essential for you to engage in the world around you. Engage just like you did here on Harvard's campus. And I learned about you lying down in front of Memorial Chapel to insist that Black Lives Matter, or seeing Harvard University dining service workers through their strike, standing with them in a fight for better health care, or joining the hundreds of thousands who came together to take part in a women's march or the science march or the climate march. You've got to, you must maintain that determination and commitment to making things better once you leave this campus, because as I said, you're the most engaged, tolerant, talented generation in our history.
Literally, look at that right there. He's saying, the vice president of the United States at the time is saying, good for you for lying down on the grass in protest in front of Memorial Chapel. You are the most tolerant, talented generation in American history. This is being instructed. This is being glorified. This was in 2017. This behavior has been happening and being rewarded. And so no offense to the people who are shocked today at what's going on at Columbia. Are you really shocked? Have you been living under a rock? Maybe you have been. But this is the reality. Yes, Shanzi.
Just seeing Biden from 6 years ago.
I know.
He could competently slang the BS. Oy, my, things have changed.
Well, you notice at the beginning he stumbled on a word. It started to look like him today.
That was so much better than
Totally.
him today, though.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Let's watch another video of this going on. This is from a year later in 2018 when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was delivering the Yale Class Day speech.
We're living through a time when fundamental rights, civic virtue, freedom of the press, even facts and reason are under assault like never before. But we are also witnessing an era of new moral conviction, civic engagement, and a sense of devotion to our democracy and country. So here's the good news. If any group were ever prepared to rise to the occasion, it is you, the class of 2018. You've already demonstrated the character and courage that will help you navigate this tumultuous moment. And most of all, you've demonstrated resilience.
It is such puffing. It's such posturing. And again, no wonder. We are literally, I can vouch for this as a recent member of one of these universities. We are constantly being told how great we are. We're constantly being told how groundbreaking we are. And we are constantly being rewarded for our resistance. I mean, what these leaders should be telling us is, hey, we admire your commitment to want to make a better world, or we admire your activism, but you actually don't know very much. You're 22 years old. You've got a lot to learn. Believe it or not, you should not be in charge of the United States of America at your age. You should not be in charge of curriculum at these universities. I mean, it's so hubristic to think that you at this age as a college student are so enlightened that you know everything that needs to be changed. I mean, when I see people at universities not just protesting against this Israel stuff, but, protesting against certain courses or elements of the curriculum, it's like, what the hell do you know? Your brain isn't fully developed. How are you so certain that you have that kind of knowledge to demand that your elders, your primitive elders, change in order to reflect the kind of things that you want? And then we see here with these Israel people, they don't know bleep about Israel. They don't know bleep about Gaza. You see these videos of people going, like Ami Horowitz and others who are brave enough to go onto these campuses, going up to these students and they're going, hey, so you're chanting from the river to the sea. What river? What sea? And you see that they literally cannot answer it. But this is being inculcated and this is being rewarded. When I was in college, I had the opportunity, my final few weeks of my senior year, to deliver a senior speech. Harvard has 12 upperclassmen houses, and one person from each upperclassman house gets chosen, so 12 members of the graduating senior class, to deliver a 5-minute long speech in Memorial Chapel, which is that chapel that Vice President Biden referenced in that speech where he was saying, you guys were so great for lying down in the grass in front of Memorial Chapel. That's where the speeches are. And so I was selected to represent my house to deliver a speech. And I thought long and hard about what I would want to talk about, because they say that you can talk about anything in that 5-minute address. And then it became very clear to me what it was that I wanted to say as my kind of closing moment at Harvard University. When I was given that microphone and that opportunity to say something about my experience for 5 minutes, which, by the way, as I've talked about on the show, was not all bad. In fact, in many ways, I loved Harvard. I had a great dorm. I had great friends. I had great professors. I had many wonderful opportunities. I have never totally slimeballed Harvard or any of these institutions in their totality. It's actually very sad what's happening because there's a lot of potential for greatness at these universities. But I thought long and hard about what I would want to say in that final opportunity. And I gave a senior speech on this very thing, on the rancid, corrosive, woke ways of thinking that have permeated these institutions, and the cowardice of so many individuals, students and faculty and administrators alike, in condoning and allowing these ideas to perpetuate. And I just want to play 2 clips of my speech for you, just some segments of it. This is where I am talking about what we just saw with Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, puffing up students. I talk in the speech about how we have consumed a cultural diet of this rancid way of thinking. Let's listen. We Americans of recent generations have been swaddled in prosperity and security, and in consequence have become ungrateful for the blessings we enjoy. Even worse, we have consumed a cultural diet that reduces America to its ugliest moments and dismisses its noble ideals and accomplishments as jingoism. Okay, so again, I am playing this speech to show the main point of the episode, which is none of this should be surprising. If I was saying that in May of 2022, it shows you that it was there. The cultural diet of corrosive ways of thinking was very, very present even a year and a half ago. There are a lot of people who think that this kind of explosion just happened in a post-October 7th world. We have to understand the origins and the roots of this in order to figure out how we are going to turn it around. I then went on in that speech to attack, frankly, the university, students, faculty, and administrators for our cowardice in allowing these ideas to permeate. We view these things to be our birthright, our permanent and guaranteed condition, but they are not. They exist only because past generations have sacrificed to secure and maintain them. We members of this university and we Americans have shirked our responsibility as the most privileged cohort on earth. We have remained cringingly silent in the face of corrosive ideas, woke culture, that has corrupted our institutions and severed the bonds that hold our country together. Just outside of this church, there was a sign for Israeli Apartheid Week of an upside-down, faded American flag with painted bullet holes in it. And we remain silent. We must not lie to ourselves or to one another by denying that a large reason that we remain silent is that we see personal and professional advantages in doing so. We are ashamed to be American. The shame should be on us. We are using our privilege to undermine the very system that has given us that privilege. There in the speech, I talk about the personal and professional advantages that we all got at these universities for remaining silent in the face of these corrosive ideas, and in some cases, even perpetuating these corrosive ideas. Talk about a personal and professional advantage, having your speakers like the Vice President and the Secretary of State fawn over you for your resistance. No wonder we are seeing students literally sit in, block people from going to class, disrupting the functions of their college lives because this has been taught and this has been instructed. And so it's not only this entitlement that has been taught and instructed, but individuals have been made to be so morally confused in so many different ways. And I think that these Israel protests really very clearly lay bare the kind of moral confusion that has been taught and been inculcated at these colleges and universities. And this is really a referendum on DEI. DEI as an institutional movement. And DEI as an institutional movement is different from the individual tenets of diversity, equity, inclusion, which are three very noble things to aspire to. DEI as an institutional movement is different from those. It is teaching people to judge others based on their immutable characteristics. It is teaching people that language and principles are subjective and can be changed or twisted to be deployed or suspended at your individual will and to your individual benefit. DEI teaches what we've been talking about, that getting out and protesting and being angry and resisting and fighting and blocking kids from going to class and demanding that your university change and tearing down American flags and tearing down Israeli flags. DEI teaches you that that is something good, that you ought to do that. This is a referendum right now on DEI, this moment that we are in. So let's go through. I want to highlight some of the ways that DEI has taken principles and subverted those principles and taught people this intense confusion that certain principles can be twisted and subverted to be deployed or suspended, as I said, at your individual will. And these post-October 7th campus protests lay this very bare. So let's look first at a fundamental DEI principle of judging people based on their immutable characteristics, of dividing the world between those who are oppressors and those who are oppressed. So I'm putting up here a picture of a slide that I have shown on this show before. And it is from an ethnic studies curriculum. This is not at a college or university. This is actually at a California public high school. I have a 9th grade listener to this show who emailed me the PowerPoint slides from his ethnic studies course. And he said, Julie, please expose this on your show because I can't speak up against this in my high school or I will be punished. So you go ahead and do it. And this is one of the slides, and this is one of the core tenets of DEI, as we know. Judging people not based on objective characteristics, but based on subjectivity. So here they literally have a chart of Beyonce. And you can see that there are some traits of Beyonce, namely that she is rich, non-disabled, cisgender, and heterosexual. And those things make Beyonce privileged. But then we see that there are other characteristics, like the fact that she is a woman and she is Black, and that makes Beyonce have challenges, okay? So literally we can see, and again, this is not at a college or university, this is at a high school, but we can see that people are being taught to reduce the entire essence of a human being to their immutable characteristics and judge someone's life or judge someone's struggle based on those qualities. I don't know Beyonce. I'd love to know Beyonce, by the way, if anybody has got to connect. But I have a feeling that the things that have posed challenges to her in her life may in part have to do with the fact that she's Black or she's a woman. But I have a feeling that there are some other challenges in her life that have nothing to do with those things. Why? Because she's a human being. And not all of a human being's life is reduced or determined by their immutable characteristics. But we see here that this has been taught, okay, to divide the world between oppressor and oppressed. And what we're also seeing in this post-October 7th moment is that those labels are, because they are so subjective, are sort of tossed out or embraced depending on the individual's discretion. So if we were drawing a chart of an individual who is Jewish, it would seem that probably that teacher would take the student or the person's status as a Jew and indicate that as one of the qualities that makes that person oppressed. Right? Probably the teacher would do that. But then we see in this post-October 7th world that Jews don't count as oppressed. In fact, according to a Harvard-Harris poll, 2/3 of Americans between the ages of 18 to 24 see Jews as oppressors. So here's the fundamental part of DEI. It teaches these things, like judge people based on their oppressor versus oppressed status, which is stupid in its own right. But even if that's what they're teaching, they don't even adhere to it, because they'll toss out an oppressed status like being a Jew when it doesn't politically benefit them. So that is the mask coming off example number one. That DEI purports to support the underdog, to support the oppressed. But then when it comes to Jews, no, Jews are not count as oppressed, they are count as oppressors. Let's look at another tenet of DEI that is taught, and then in this post-October 7th moment, it is tossed out or distorted according to the individual's own discretion. How much do we hear about in this woke DEI world that we're on stolen land here in the United States of America, right? We hear about that a lot, that we have to be aware of being on stolen land, and that it is a noble thing to have people return to their ancestral homeland. I'll show you a picture of protest. I mean, we see these all the time all around the country. Stolen land, stolen land, stolen land. Well, when it comes to the Jews and their right to return to their ancestral homeland, these woke people don't care. They don't. What I'm trying to show here is that the principles that they claim to harbor and they claim to support are twisted and thrown out at their will. And that's what we are seeing right now. So the oppressor versus oppressed stuff is very malleable. Jews don't count as oppressed. And then this people's right to return to their ancestral homeland is also very malleable. Because if that is their principle, that individuals have a right to their homeland, then they should support the Jews living in Israel. They shouldn't be calling for the eradication of the Jewish state. But they are a confused cohort of people because they have taught to be confused. Because whenever these principles are taught in this DEI institutional movement setting, they are not taught as hard and fast rules. They are taught as things to be bended and to be, applied or suspended at one's personal discretion. I'll give you an example. Look at the way that woke individuals and DEI individuals talk up a big game about supporting, protecting, and amplifying Black voices in this country. But then, when it's someone like Larry Elder, or Thomas Sowell, or Clarence Thomas, those individuals are called Uncle Toms. They're called coons. They're called self-hating Black Americans because they're conservative. So again, here we see DEI/wokeism is teaching a principle, which is protect and amplify Black voices. But then we see that it's being distorted and turned at one's own individual discretion to say, oh, well, when those Black voices are conservative, then there's no obligation to protect them. In fact, you scorn them. So we're seeing this more generally, example after example, of a DEI principle being taught and then spun and turned and abandoned at one's own discretion. Let's look at a big one. Let's look at the way that free speech has been taken and twisted and used and pulled back, depending on the individual's own will. Many, not all, but many woke DEI people, proponents of these institutional movements, tend to be overwhelmingly anti-free speech or supportive of putting restrictions on free speech, criminalizing hate speech. For instance, at Princeton University, there was a class that was taught, I believe it was last fall, or perhaps it was the fall before. And the class was about how the right wing in this country uses free speech as a weapon to promulgate hate. So we know that, generally woke DEI proponents are anti-free speech. Well, what we are now seeing in this post-October 7th crazy world is that those individuals who claim to have the principle of suspending speech or criminalizing hate speech, they are now clinging to free speech now that it benefits them. We saw this, among other things, with Claudine Gay's testimony before Congress, where she was asked about the treatment of Jewish students, and she hid behind the First Amendment. Let's play it.
With respect to I believe the question was about student conduct. So again, we are deeply committed to free expression, but when speech crosses over into conduct that violates our policies, policies against bullying, harassment, intimidation, we do take action.
See, she's changing the principle here. She's saying we're committed to free speech, and when free speech becomes action, that's when we punish it. That is not true. That has not historically been true on Harvard's campus. Harvard had a training that said that using the wrong pronouns constitutes abuse. And sizeism and fat phobia are attitudes which contribute to violence, okay? So we see that a principle that DEI, the institutional movement, has of speech is violence, or we need to punish and criminalize certain speech, is adhered to until they need to change because they're being questioned in front of Congress about the way that Jews are being treated. And then all of a sudden, Claudine Gay goes, oh no, actually our policy is that we are pro-free speech and we only punish it when it turns into conduct. Taking a principle, subverting it, and deploying it or suspending it based on your individual will. Shall we go on to other examples? How about a core tenet of wokeism in DEI, which is believe all women? How many times do we see that? Believe all women, trust survivors, believe in survivors. Here's a picture of a protest in front of the Supreme Court a few months ago. Believe women, okay? Core DEI tenet. Then we are seeing on a lot of these colleges and universities that when it comes to Israeli women who were raped on October 7th, and the overwhelming evidence that supports that Israeli women were raped on October 7th, don't believe those women. That's Zionist propaganda. The through line of all of this is that DEI as an institutional movement is a fraud. The mask is off. It does not teach hard and fast principles that are applied to everyone. It teaches that you, as I've said a million times, use them when you want them, and you don't use them when you don't want them. I'll give two more examples. Isn't it a core element of DEI and wokeism that language matters? And that if someone who is a part of a oppressed group or of a minority group tells you that certain language is offensive, you should believe them, and you should go to every effort to try to not use that language and to make those individuals feel safe. That is one of the biggest tenets of DEI. Let's look at a initiative that was at Stanford as an example. I think it has since been suspended because it got so much backlash. This was called the Elimination of Harmful Language initiative at Stanford University. And they had all of these lists of words that you should not use because it could possibly offend someone. For instance, you can't, according to that initiative, you can't use the term blind study. Why? Because it's offensive to people who are blind, or it could be offensive to people who are blind. Another example they had in that crazy initiative, walk-in hours, like walk-in office hours, is a no-no because some people are wheelchair bound and some people can't walk. You literally can't make this stuff up. Brown bagged lunch was another term that the Stanford Elimination of Harmful Language Institute deemed to be a no-no because, oh my gosh, it has the term brown in it. So we see that what many of these institutions have adopted is that language that could in any way be possibly offensive to a minority group or a historically oppressed group should be avoided. But then we see now when it's coming to the Jews and Jewish students on campus, is intifada given that same kind of treatment? Many Jews have said that the term intifada is very offensive. It's very scary. Also, during the past 40 years, there's been the first and second intifadas in Israel where many Israelis were massacred and killed by terrorists coming in and carrying out these intifadas. You can agree or disagree with whether or not intifada is a offensive term, whether or not students should be allowed to use it. I am a free speech absolutist. I do think that people should be allowed to use basically any terms they want. That's not the point. The point is that if these woke people are so committed to their tenet of any word that could possibly be offensive to someone should be avoided, then they should not use terms like intifada. But of course they do, because DEI is not based on principles, it is based on subjectivity. Yes, Sean?
The term brown bag was not offensive because it has the word brown in it. It's offensive because in the South, they would hold up a brown bag, and if the person's shade of skin were lighter than the bag, they were admitted into wherever.
Oh, I didn't know
or
that.
they were
Okay, that's good to know.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for clarifying. Though we wouldn't be shocked if the only reason for the term brown bagged lunch to be deemed offensive is because it has the word brown in it. A lot of these designations are very stupid. But I'm just trying to provide so many examples of how the mask on DEI has come off and the internal contradictions are laid bare. I'll give you one final one, which is, again, speaking generally, I'm not speaking about every single individual who is woke or every single institutional proponent of DEI, but many of those individuals talk very much about the threat posed by neo-Nazis in the United States of America, white supremacists, that they say that those individuals pose the greatest threat to our country, and Donald Trump and his supporters are neo-Nazis. So they claim to be very anti-neo-Nazi, but then chants of the eradication of the Jewish state are not deemed to be neo-Nazi. Or people saying, hey, hey, ho, ho, Israel's got to go, is not deemed to be neo-Nazi. Or people who are on Columbia's campus, as we saw in one of those videos, yelling, October 7th, never forget October 7th, October 7th will be every day. Those are not treated as neo-Nazi chants. Unequal treatment, unequal application of values and principles. That is what characterized DEI, and that is why none of us should be shocked. And I gave the example of how Black conservatives were treated in this DEI movement as an early example before October 7th of seeing this unequal application of standards. But we saw this in a lot of ways. We saw that woke individuals, many proponents of DEI were saying during the Black Lives Matter riots, for example, that when people riot and loot, they're taking back what's theirs, and they're justified in their violence for taking back what's theirs. No wonder, if they were saying that then about Black Lives Matter, that same argument is being used to justify what Hamas did on October 7th. We hear a lot of these students at these universities saying, oh, well, what Hamas did on October 7th is justified because they're taking back what's theirs. The seeds of this have been there. And DEI institutionally is not based on objective principles, but is based on subjectivity and malleability. And dear God, I hope that now it has gotten to a point where this is so obviously contradictory. This is so obviously hypocritical, so obviously illiberal, that people see it for what it is, and that they will feel redoubled in their motivation to turn it around. So I want to end the show, given that large discussion about the internal contradictions and nature of DEI. I want to end the show by providing some advice to college students who are there on campus right now, because, boy, it is a really, really bad time, to put it lightly. And as we've been discussing throughout this episode, it's been a bad time on college campuses and universities for a while now. But the fact that we're now at a point where Columbia is suspending classes for a day because the campus environment is so hostile and students' safety is so severely threatened that actually they have to go home, that is entering a new territory of bad that I didn't even have to deal with. So if there are any college students who are listening, and I know that there are, or there will be, maybe not live right now, but will be, because I get a lot of emails from college students, and you can always email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from anyone and everyone, but I do get a lot of emails from college students. I want to tell you how sorry I am that this is happening. How sorry I am that one of the best times of your life, a time of growth and exploration and trying things out. College is supposed to be a time when you push the boundaries of what's possible, where you challenge your preconceived notions, where you try to embrace new ideas, new ways of doing things. I am so sorry that this time for you has been so tainted and so destroyed by this woke DEI rancid insanity. But what I will say to you is this: please have the courage to be disliked. And that is a really hard thing. But your country needs you, and your university needs you. And I know this sounds very dramatic, but we are at a very dangerous and dire moment right now in this country, where we need students like you to stand up and say that this is nonsense. We need the majority, and I do believe it is a majority still, of people in this country who are rational, normal, truly tolerant, truly inclusive, truly liberal. We need those individuals to show themselves, to unapologetically proclaim that this is what they believe in, that they reject this crazy wokeism. We need people to come out and show themselves, because that is how we turn all of this rancidness around. By showing that the people who are perpetuating this are a minority, and their ways of thinking are not what the masses really want. And that's very hard to do on a university. That's hard to do in your classes, to raise your hand, especially when you have these crazy woke people who in class will come at you and yell at you for saying what you believe. I have been there. Trust me, I have been in classes where people bark at me and they call me a white supremacist and they call me all kinds of names. It is not a good feeling to stand up for your principles and stand up for what you believe in. But as I said, I really want to encourage you to have the courage to be disliked. Being disliked is not always a bad thing. We live in a culture where we think it is, and people try to avoid it at all costs. But if you are doing something good in this world, if you are doing something noble, it is a guarantee that you are going to be disliked. As I have said on the show before, I don't quite know where I stand religiously. You're thinking, what does this have to do with being a college student? I'll tell you how it has to do with it. I don't quite know where I stand religiously. I do believe in God, but not quite sure who I am or what I am denominationally. But I will tell you that I get such enormous strength from the story of Christianity, even if I don't know if I fully believe in it. And the reason for that is that at the center, really the center story of the entire Christian religion is one of someone being noble and being punished because they were noble. I love that because it is such a fundamental truth of life. Here we have, if you believe in the Christian story, the Son of God who came to earth to heal the sick, to help the poor, to bring truth, beauty, and goodness. The most righteous person to ever exist. And that person was crucified. And that person was punished. And that person had people who would snarl at him and wouldn't believe in him and who would try to stand in his way at every point. Putting your religious beliefs aside, there is an enormous lesson to be taken from that story, which is, again, if you are doing something noble, it is a guarantee that you will be disliked. I'm here to help. I'm here to support. I have been there, not as bad as the moment is now, but I have been there. Please feel free to reach out to me if you would like support, if you would like counsel. This is a tough moment, but we have to stand up to this rancid crap. Because at the risk of sounding totally dramatic, our civilization is at stake. Let us be the kind of leaders who we think we are. Let us take the privilege and the benefits of this American system that all of us are the beneficiaries of. And let us walk forward steadfast in our determination to preserve those principles for ourselves and for the next generation. It's go time. We don't have a choice. It's go time. Should I talk about my pillow?
Yeah, and then I'll tell you something noble that happened afterwards. I didn't want to interrupt your rant. I know how good you were going there. So yeah, pillow me up.
I want to give that a moment though, because that was quite a call at the end. No, but let me tell you, I am so determined to do everything I can to turn this around. And this has really been the vocation of my career, has been to try to alert people to the craziness of wokeism and DEI and get back to fundamental American principles. That's why I call myself a conservative. I want to conserve free speech. I want to conserve tolerance. I want to conserve freedom of religion. I want to conserve a meritocracy. I want to conserve not judging people based on their immutable characteristics, but judging them on the content of their character. That's what I want to conserve. And we are seeing right now that we have so gotten away from that. And I'm telling you, as depressing as these videos are and depressing as this moment is, I at least feel like it has given me so much fuel to go out there and continue to fight to save this country. On that note, let's talk about something a little lighter, which is my pillow. Great transition. I use a lot of My Pillow products, as some of you know. I sleep on a My Pillow. I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels and I wear my slippers, which is definitely my favorite My Pillow product. And you can get a lot of these products at a massive discount because right now My Pillow is having a $25 extravaganza. Okay. It is just what it sounds like. You get 2-pack multi-use My Pillows for $25, My Pillow sandals for $25, 6-pack towel sets for $25, brand new 4-pack dish towels for, you guessed it, $25. And for the first time ever, you'll get the premium My Pillows with all new Giza fabric for just $25. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping. Just go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 today and use the promo code Hartman, which, as Shanzi always observes, is spelled with no E and one N. I love My Pillow products. I would not advertise them if I did not use them, so please do check out those discounts. Taking a moment to read the chat.
Yeah, while you look at that.
Glad this is resonating.
The owner of the New England Patriots, longtime owner of the New England Patriots, Robert Kraft, was a student at Columbia, went there on scholarship, and he has pulled his support for Columbia University. He said that
Good.
It was through the full academic scholarship Columbia gave me that I was able to attend college and get my start in life, and for that I have been tremendously grateful. However, the school I love so much, the one that welcomed me and provided me so much opportunity, is no longer an institution I recognize. I am deeply saddened by the virulent hate that continues to grow on campus and throughout the country. I am no longer confident that Columbia can protect its students and staff, and I am not comfortable supporting the university until corrective action is taken.
Yep. This is what needs to happen. People have to start making moves. They have to pull their money. Students have to stop attending classes. I mean, things need to happen, you know? Because I think for too long, what has happened is that there has been a silent majority. And again, I do believe that it still is a majority despite how loud the crazies are. There's been this silent majority who's kind of like known that all of this is crazy, but they haven't wanted to speak up. Now is the time. The good news about how crazily all of this has shaken out and metastasized is it actually gives people an opportunity to stake their claim to something. I mean, this has gotten so far bad where classes are being suspended, donors are pulling your money. If you're at universities, use this opportunity. Use this opportunity where things are being shaken up and people in positions of power are realizing how bad things have gotten. You know, I know it sounds really corny, but circulate petitions. Go out with your friends and with signs of your own. Don't be a crazy, protester like all of those others, but, stake your claim to something. Go on social media. Social media is totally responsible for a lot of our brainwash, but it is also a great tool. Go on social media and post what you believe. Usually I'm not such a huge advocate of the exhibitionist culture, but right now we do need people who are staking their claims to something and who are saying enough is enough. I think this is crazy, because we need to start stigmatizing the corrosive ideas. The harborers of the corrosive ideas stigmatize regular people. Regular people, it is now time to stigmatize the corrosive thinkers. Let's see some final comments here. I'm glad this is resonating. Thank you so much for your lovely comments. Someone asked if I had to submit a draft of my senior speech before I delivered it. No. If I had to do that, then maybe I would not have ended up being able to deliver that speech. But no, I didn't have to submit a draft. And I walked in there that day. So it was so sweet. I had friends show up to listen, and there were other just random people who were there for the speech, people who lived in Cambridge, people at the university. And I walked in and I went up to the chaplain. And the chaplain said to me, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "No, but you should be." Can you believe I said that? And I remember she kind of looked at me like, "What?" And I said, "I'm about to deliver a zinger. This is not going to be the typical speech that you come in or you have students come in and give." So That's what I remember about that senior speech. But thank you all so much for joining me. As a reminder, we are live Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays right here on this channel at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And I post smaller, duly noted videos after the show where I pull the most noteworthy parts of the episode. But the main takeaways for today is that DEI is a hoax. Fraudulent, corrupt hoax, not based on principles, but based on subjective malleability. And it is time for all of us to wave our hands and say enough of this crap. On that note, you have a lovely day. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.